All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Ask an Architect. Hey, James, how you doing?
Hey Jack, doing good.
Great. I've got Kaylin and Deb joining us. We got the whole team from Reynard here to talk about design aesthetics. Kaylin, how are you today?
Yeah, doing good, doing good.
All right. I'm checking in with Deb. Deb's our
Hey
project
guys,
coordinator. Hey, Deb.
excited to hear all the questions and see what James thinks about everything.
He has lots of opinions. He thinks about everything. So we'll get it. Well, tonight we're talking about design aesthetic, and I picked this topic because as clients of ours come on and start designing their dream homes, uh, we talk a lot early on, especially about style, is another way of putting it, or taste. And sometimes it's hard for clients to really articulate or verbalize what they really like about something when they're seeing it, especially. So we kind of guide them through the process of uncovering their personal style for their home. And I'm talking about things like architectural style, yeah, the way things look and feel inside and out, kind of the design of the home itself. So, James, I wanted to just crack into the topic of design aesthetics and ask kind of an open-ended question. When we start a new architectural design project for a custom home with a client, what are some of the first things you do, or the action steps we take together with those clients to understand what their taste and style is on a home?
Sure. I mean, it's a good question. It's complicated,
It
right?
is, yeah.
There's, I think for you and I, when we first meet with clients, we're probably trying to draw out a narrative
Mm,
of how people live in their house. And I think if you start there, that often leads into their style because not every time is it going to be pictures. In a lot of cases, it is images. For most clients, whether you know like what the style is called, not everyone knows exactly what like modern farmhouse is or anything like that. They might have elements of it in their mind,
mm,
but it could get confused out with other things. Like there's some things in contemporary that's not always contemporary. Could be more mid-century modern. Could be more craftsman. Certain elements get like carried over to different styles. So I think there's multiple ways to look at it. I think if we can draw out a narrative of how they live their lives, what they want to try and achieve at the end of the day with their design, I think that's important because then you start to think to yourself, okay, the images you're showing me are like this. The way that you want to live your life is like this. How you think you interact with the space. This is how you want people to perceive the house. Sometimes they all line up. Sometimes they don't line up. And we have to kind of decipher what that is. So that's a really good starting place to kind of understand. So narrative, I think, how you live your life, and then images backed up with images.
yeah, kind of what's the story? And a lot of times what I'll ask clients in some way or another, one form or another, is what's the vision for the home? What are they envisioning? And sometimes that's a vision statement where you can succinctly say, this home is, for example, going to be a short-term rental. Well, even just that one sentence or statement to start your vision statement can inform a lot of design. What does short-term rental mean? Well, then where is the short-term rental going to be? Is it on the beach, in the mountains, somewhere in between? Um, so yeah, and then like you said, the narrative, how is the home going to be used? Yeah, I do think that informs a lot of the style too. So how do you start taking, because I'll talk to a client and they've always got a Pinterest board. Almost everybody's got,
Yeah.
um, or if not a Pinterest board, at least a scrapbook or of some sort, or a bunch of images on their phone
Yeah.
from
Yeah. Exactly.
screenshots. So how do you start sifting through those images, creating a story, and then creating kind of a design? I mean, I call it a design vocabulary, like attaching
Yeah.
words and meaning to that.
Well, for starters, I don't let clients off the hook. I don't let them give me like 10,000 photos and be like, figure out my design style from this. It's like, that's not going to happen. That's going to take way too long for me to decipher. So I think a good starting place for that is, hey, have a look at the images that you have. And we've done this with certain clients. We look at their Pinterest board together, for example. And you can see maybe they've had it for like 2 years and they've been thinking about this house for 2 years, probably longer than that. They've just started collecting images for 2 years, right? And you can see the transition from when they pinned images of an exterior 2 years ago versus what they're pinning now. And often it gets like, as it gets more serious, it's like actually it's quite whimsical, 2 years ago. Now we're actually talking about floor plans. Like in the present, we're talking about like certain things. Like I've now got pictures of kitchen cabinets sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like now I have like, this is actually how I want the roof to kind of sit when I walk in through the front door. This is the gable I want to come in through, or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So assessing what we have, I think, is important. And then obviously I get images all the time from clients. So my question back is like, all right, so what particular item in this image is really important? Or you've sent through a floor plan. What about this floor plan is really working? Is it like the open concept? Is it the foyer that you're walking in? Is it the bedrooms? Is it like the shared bathroom or something like that?
It's everything, James. It's like everything.
Yeah.
Exactly. A lot of clients will say that, won't they?
It's everything. It's just like all of it. So, I mean, we do just have to kind of like put it down through a funnel and figure out what's important. Because the other thing people are going to have is they're going to have a square footage and a cost associated with everything. So sometimes those conversations can be a little bit rough. Like, yeah, I mean, the video you showed me on Instagram is a 10,000 square foot house. We rarely have to get that into 1,500 square feet. That's going to be fun. So, so sometimes they're a little bit tougher, but what they're showing you is just what's in their head. And you got to figure out, all right, so yes, we do need to shrink the square footage, but the overall, the materials that you're talking about, like, the vibe of that house, I guess is a good way of putting it, is what you're looking to achieve. So how do we move towards that in a way that can constructible and cost effective?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why the vision statement's so important too, because that'll inform the budget. Here's a home we're trying to build for this purpose, and here's what we're willing to spend to accomplish that. That's going to inform design, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think of one of the other things I know that you bring up is like a have to have versus like a wish list.
Priorities,
like of things that, priorities. What they want in a house. That's often a good way to filter out what works and what's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, what do you do when people say, like, because sometimes people are really hung up on a term, like it's mountain modern or modern rustic, or what's one I've heard a lot lately? Mid-century comes up a lot, but that could be anything, or contemporary. Contemporary seems to be a very big term, right?
It is.
What do you do when people come to you with these big terms, and how do you unpack those?
Yeah, because it can get a little bit confusing, because contemporary is not like a modern, what you would consider like a modern contemporary is like the straight lines and things like that, right? But just to say the word contemporary, that's like a house of today. It's what's in like fashion right now is more contemporary versus like modern contemporary or mid-century modern contemporary. These are all different styles. I don't really get stuck when someone says, hey, I want it to be mid-century modern or something like that. I'm like, sure, what does that actually mean to you? Right. Yeah. I need you to then go on and define what that means to you, because I've had people, and sure, I'm probably guilty of this, we're probably all guilty of this, of saying the wrong style name for a certain style, right? And then we'll get like a client, they'll be like mid-century modern, mid-century modern, mid-century modern, and they're sending me through things that are like craftsmen. I'm like, wait, what am I looking at? Like, are we doing one style or the other? And it's like, actually, okay, and it's fine. You can mix up the terms. It doesn't bother me. So it's kind of like, all right, you've heard the term. There's some things that you're associating with, but then define it further for me so I make sure that I understand it. So it does come down to an understanding.
Yeah, I mean, what we do is we're trying to make something truly custom. So we're trying to make something that doesn't exist in the world. So, and it has to be the client's vision, in my mind. Like that's the most important part, is that the client sees themselves in the home and they see their own story unfold in the home. And so I imagine there could be a way in which a client says, I want contemporary, and then you give them your take on contemporary, and you're way off. Like you guys are
Oh yeah, yeah,
not jiving on terms. So I think it's like what I like about our process is it's designed to unpack meaning from terms instead of just
yeah.
taking them for granted and go, okay, cool. Here's a contemporary home, or my favorite's timeless. I like that word term because I don't know what it means exactly.
Right, right. It means what
I
you
mean,
want it to
I
mean.
know what it means. Like I know what clients are saying. But,
Yeah.
yeah, Kaylin, did you have a question for James too?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of probably touched a little bit on it. Sorry, my 2-year-old
know.
is obsessed with Grogu and is just saying Grogu over and over again.
Hey, that's fine. We're glad to have it.
So what would you say the hardest part is for clients when it comes to coming up with like a personal style?
Oh, that's
Yeah, in the process, yeah.
it kind of differs from different people, I think, different clients, because some of them struggle with images. Some will struggle with the comparison between images and cost, or square footage and cost. You know, they might bring in a bunch of different things that are like really beautiful, but then you're like, yeah, but your budget is way too low for that level of finish. That's the issue that comes in often off Instagram videos, is the level of finish is so much like higher than what the budget is, so it makes it for a difficult conversation. Trying to think of other things that were kind of common places where people get stuck. I guess just having too many options is often one. Too many images. You're like, oh, I'm in love with all these things, and I'm deciphering what you're trying to decipher. So you're filtering, and then I'm filtering what you're giving me. So that then I'm producing something that I show you back, and it may not hit the way that you want, because just what you want is just out of grasp of what you're trying to describe. So therefore, it's just out of grasp of what I'm trying to show you, sort of thing. So there can be slight misalignment, and then that's why we run such an in-depth sort of design phase, right? Because I'm trying to realign that up. Sometimes we hit it on the head like pretty close to straight away if someone has a very clear vision statement, and other people, when they have less of an idea of what they want, they have more of a feeling of like materials and things like that in the site, then it may take longer to align on those things. I hope that kind of answers what you're getting at, Kaylin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've kind of touched on probably, I think it is just a hard process in general, in the sense of like you are trying to capture something, basically abstract, and trying to and make it non-abstract to a degree.
Yeah, for sure. It makes me think of like if someone gives you an open-ended brief, they're the really hard projects to work on, right? Yeah. You actually want it to be more refined. You don't want it to be constrictive.
Right.
Like the other end of the spectrum, but like you want them to have a general idea of, hey, this is how many bedrooms I want, this is the style I want, and this is the site I have. And you're like, all right, cool, that's a really good starting place. But to have someone be like, hey, I'm still looking for land and I have a pretty open concept, it's like, well, we might have to talk again in 6 months, because find some land or have something that at least grounds or anchors the project before we can.
Right.
Well, that's what I like about the process is I enjoy meeting with people on site. I enjoy going out to the property and imagining what that home is going to look like on that specific property, and starting to envision and dream. And like Kaylin said, it is abstract at that point, because you're really just visualizing nothing that could be something that's there. And but once we start unpacking words, like I always try to encourage people to give us more, not less, when it comes to what they like, and I'd almost say, like, give us as much as you can. I know that's probably a little overwhelming sometimes, and maybe we get too many images to sift through, but what I'm hoping for in those early conversations is just get the conversation going, because if you start talking, I think a story starts to come out, and the more questions that we ask, and the more we kind of probe and get into it, we're able to see what that client values. I think that's the biggest thing I'm always looking for is like what's important to you and what do you value.
Yeah.
And then I
Right.
know that you've been putting together some really cool renderings, and some of those are animated. Talk about that process, James. Like, how does that go? Have you had anybody say they hate it yet when you show them those first renderings, or what are you looking for in those conversations too?
Yeah, good question. No one said that they hate it, just us, but it can give you a warped view of what things look like, right? It's a really good way for a client to understand how the land works and how the house will sit on it, especially on those early sort of concept drawings and things like that, because a 2D drawing just doesn't do enough for most clients. So the positives are that for a client, they can see how it sits on the site, they can see how the slope works, and the slope is often like more dramatic than people initially think. And most sites that we work on are covered in trees. So when I start with it, I don't add in all the trees. So it's just a house in the land. So you can really see like the land, how it falls, how the slope falls off. And some of them are very dramatic. Right.
Yeah.
And then I put the trees on that, it kind of hides it again. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what's behind it. But then it gives you the layout, it gives you how much feel for the house itself. And it goes a long way to kind of like translate the plans into something that's much more gives us a context of how we could actually start seeing ourselves in the house. The other thing it does is if I can make it work in 3D, because I build it in a way that almost like a contractor would put it together. So if there's something that's poking out or looking strange or something like that, I can actually look at it in 3D and make sure that it would build correctly in real life. So that works well for me. So if I can make it work in 3D, then I can make it work in real life, which has been very helpful. To line up engineering and things like that. The third thing touches on people not liking it, kind of like what you're saying, Jack, is it's a 3D, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. It's not real life, right? So sometimes the lens that we look through on the rendering software might be a bit fish-eyed, or it might be a bit too constrictive or something like that, right? So it might make spaces look a certain way, or, the textures might not line up to real life because it's extremely hard to do that, right? So sometimes it can be a bit off in that. So we may look at a square footage, especially if it's a smaller square footage, we put everything together. If it's a very tight space, the rendering will actually make it look very tight, very small sort of thing. So I have to put furniture in it. I have to try and put people in it to give more and more context for those sorts of renders. Otherwise, you look at them, you're like, actually, this is a really tiny space. It's like, well, it's actually, in this context, it's a bit bigger than that because of the camera lens that we're looking at it through is a bit fish-eyed. So, it's only an aid at the end of the day.
Yeah, but I do think it does help people, because I look at all those renderings every time they come through on the project boards, and I see such different, I don't know of a better word than style, but there's each of those clients and each of their homes, they're so unique. They have their own characteristics architecturally. Have you identified any favorites or any styles that you put some words to, or some architectural elements you've been using lately that are really eye-catching?
Things that I enjoy myself, you mean?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think the ones that are easiest for me, or the ones that I enjoy that come naturally to me, are probably what we've been calling more like rustic contemporary, or like mountain home contemporary thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most of our houses, right? We're in North Georgia, so a lot of them are on the sides of hills and mountains and stuff like that. So, but that sort of style, some elements that kind of pop, the natural wood finish and things like that, the nice gables and stuff like that. But then we're also mixing in like some just regular siding and stuff, some stonework and things like that. They're probably the things I enjoy the most, I think, style-wise.
Yeah, and now you mentioned stone, and it makes me think about materials. Like, how do you, when you're unpacking all of this, because some I don't know, some project briefs are going to be more demanding than others. Some are going to have bigger budgets than others. Some of them are going to be on more challenging pieces of property. But when you get to the point of helping a client get to a point where they're realizing the kind of the vision for their home, they're realizing that they're seeing a concept and they're seeing that unfold, then they're going to start getting into material selection. I think that's an important part too. I wanted to hear you talk about is how do you help them with like a core material selection or even a palette? Are there times that you're kind of talking through what that material palette looks like, or what the color relationship looks like, exterior and interior?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's two things there. Yeah, the color palette for sure is a big thing. Materials, color has less to do with cost. Unless it's like we're talking about different costs, different colors of stone or something like that, right? But materials themselves obviously has a big impact on cost if we're talking finishes, because the foundations will be the foundations. If we're a single story on a slab is a lot less expensive than like a full basement on the side of a mountain that's going to need like maybe some piers or something underneath it to stop it from sliding down the hill, right? So those sorts of things are required versus the actual finishes of it and what materials we're gonna choose. So things to keep in mind would be, siding, board and batten are going to be your lower end sort of things, and then your stone finish, your brick finish, things like that. There's different roof styles, roof types, metal roofing, certain types of shingles. Obviously not asphalt shingles, but there's certain shingles types that can be really expensive. So probably having those discussions early on, even if we don't apply them, but just so we have them in our mind, be like, we are looking at using some stone, but we should probably be conservative of where we need it. Which kind of brings me into the conversation about like HOAs or ACCs or any sort of architectural review board. A lot of them require stone or brick or something like along those terms to hire foundations. Wood siding can't go all the way down to the ground, so we often finish like the ground foundations with stone or brick. So we have to be conservative of how we use it, especially when we're on a restrictive budget, because even though the HOA is requiring it, it might be out of the budget to wrap the whole basement level, for instance, in brick. It just blows out the budget because all of a sudden the HOAs come in and said, hey, we want it to look this way. And it's like, well, that's not what we had in our minds when we first began. So material choice is very important early on.
Well, it affects style so directly too. I mean, if you can't afford, if the budget package doesn't allow for real stone on the exterior, then what do you do? Like, are there alternatives? What's going to get approved and stay within budget? Or I think about windows. Windows are a really good example because if you're on a budget, we actually do have somebody joining us, so we'll have time for another question. Hi, Cece. I'm glad you could join us. You're able to log in.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find the link for some reason, and I'm a little late anyway. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. We got about 10 more minutes, so it'll be good for us to get into a couple of good questions that you might have. Cece, we're talking about design aesthetics and kind of going through an architectural design project and how we help our clients pick out materials currently. What kind of materials affect budget the most, because selecting the materials within the budget and also keeping within the style that we have. So whenever you're ready, if you have a question, if you'd like to jump in, or there's a hand raising feature, but ask a question whenever one comes to mind, if you'd like.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. But yeah, James, what I was talking about with vinyl windows, for example, they're probably the most cost-effective window you can put in. But if you're trying to stay cost-effective, you're going to be limited to white vinyl windows, for example.
Right.
So that's going to directly impact the style of the home right away. So if you're trying to go for a more rustic look. Vinyl white windows might not fit into that. So
Right.
it's kind of that tug of war, right? Like how do you accomplish the style within the budget?
Yeah. And I would say to that vinyl window sort of point is, I would say, and I know we talked about this previously, is like flexibility in design, just to keep an open mind about things. Vinyl windows have come a long way from what they used to. Especially if you have a two-toned, like you could do black on the outside and do white on the inside. No one really knows why black windows are more expensive than white windows. What is the reasoning behind that?
The color pellets that they put into the extruder. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I can't imagine they come out of pure white in the beginning. But yeah, all of those sorts of things. So when I say flexibility, I mean, talk to me about materials, but talk to your contractor about materials. They are the ones who are purchasing it at the end of the day. Sometimes the client purchases it. We have certain clients who bring on their own elements of design, or, you know, there might be a window, they might have access to window, or they might have access to stone or something like that. They can get the cost down. But generally speaking, it's your contractor that's going to be purchasing these things. And they may have some really good alternatives to think about. And if that changes the design slightly, or, you know, something like that, that's absolutely fine. That's all built into our process. So if the contractor comes back and says, hey, we need to change it for this reason, we're like, yeah, great. Send me over the link. Let me talk to whoever I need to talk to. I'll put it in the design. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it's very, very much connected. Style, budget, vision for the home. So CC, since you're catching up with us, I'll kind of walk you through what we covered. We were one of the first questions I was asking James is kind of like, how do we develop a style? Like, how do you develop an architectural style? Or, you know, I call it design aesthetic. It's kind of like, what do you like when you see it? And taking our clients through the story, the narrative of the home helps us a lot, and it helps the client a lot as they're designing. Is when we kind of see a story unfold. What's the purpose of the home? And the purpose is going to include things like the budget, where it's located, who's going to live there, how big the home's going to be, what the home actually needs in order to facilitate. And then making it look pretty or look good within your taste is equally important. But I think what we're saying is we've had a lot of success, and James, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're having success when we're able to extract that story or that narrative from the clients very early on, instead of just taking a bunch of pictures and trying to do a hodgepodge of, you know, almost like, how do we assimilate these photos into your own home? We're more looking at them as informing the design and creating a design dialogue between the architect and the client. But yeah, they're really tied. You know, it's not just like, hey, I want it to look this way, and money's no object. It really is like guiding the process so that we're finding the right materials for that design brief.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Cece, did you have any questions that have come to mind, or did you have any? I saw one that you wrote in. I could bring that up, but I would love to hear if you had any. If not, just we can keep going.
Yeah, no, I'm very early in this process of even thinking about building a home. So really just I think one of the questions I put in there was like, what are some of the things that homeowners regret not putting into their new homes? Like, is there something that stands out as, oh man, if I would have thought of this, you know, I absolutely would have done it. Do you have anything like that a lot of homeowners do?
I see these videos on Instagram pop up all the time. different regrets or different changes in technology. People are like, oh, I wish I saw that before. I had a conversation with a client the other day about kitchens, because obviously I'm not a specific kitchen designer, so I don't know everything about kitchens. Generally layout, general things in the kitchen. Sometimes we see cool things that we try and get in there. I actually learn a lot from clients as they bring me ideas or bring me other things from, you know, subcontractors, or in this case, the kitchen designer might be like, hey, this is a really cool thing. I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, we'll try and get that into kitchens, and I can show that to future clients. But the point I'm trying to make is sometimes it's worth at some point in a project, you will get a chance to talk to either a kitchen designer or the consultant, the sub-consultant who's going to be finishing off the kitchen before they mill the cabinet work and stuff like that. And we're using kitchens as an example here, but it could work in bathrooms, it could work in, you know, whatever it is. You'll have a chance to actually go to a showroom and have a look at the kitchen and see what they have in there. Have a look at appliances. You know, you could go over to Best Buy and have a look at all of the appliances. Understand what is the difference between like a cheap dishwasher and a more expensive at the top of the line dishwasher. What is it doing differently, as an example? But just going to a kitchen designer, having a look at the different type of cabinets that they're doing in their homes, why they're doing them like that. You know, what does a soft touch sort of or soft close door and drawer feel like? So, because you'll actually be able to get your hands on it and feel it and work through it, I guess, during those sorts of visits that you can't coming into an architectural office or talking to someone on a virtual call, right? And sometimes it's a third party, sometimes it's directly with your contractor that you end up working with at the end of the day. Sometimes they have that sort of thing built into their process. So that's the conversation I had with a client the other day, and that's probably some things that are missed, I think, is having the opportunity to go and actually talk to some sub-consultants about those sort of things. Now, that could be the kitchens, it could be bathrooms, but it can also be windows and doors, right? So your contractor is going to have suppliers for those sorts of things. You can ask where they're getting them from, and you can go out to those showrooms and you can have a look at the windows that they have on display there and see which brand, or, you know, are they making them from scratch and put them in their house. So that's one thing that I think could be missed and could generate some regret if you don't get to go do that sort of thing, because that's actually one of the fun things of design, is seeing the stuff before it goes into the house and playing around.
Yeah.
Same thing with tile and stuff like that. And, you know, maybe you're putting in some vinyl wallpaper or flooring or what have you. You get to actually go see it in person. I think that could be missed. Then other things, really, it'll come back to narrative and how someone is what they're trying to get out of the house, right? Because if it's an Airbnb or short-term rental, they're probably not talking about all of the fancy things that you see on Instagram going into the house. Whereas if it's your forever home, there's probably things that you're trying to get into the house that no one has ever thought of. You know, sometimes it can be technology that you're trying to get into the house. So then when you're talking to a general contractor, talking to the electrician and like making sure they get all the electronics or the AV or the stuff like that into the house is really important. So yeah, it really does come back to narrative in a lot of ways like that.
Yeah. What about kind of upgrade path or staged construction, James? Because I think as I was thinking about Cece's question about regret, the thing that we don't want is for people to be like, oh, we're really, really stuck with this when they get into their home. And that could be a material, or maybe they wanted to add an ADU later, or a pool later, or extend onto the home later, but they don't plan for it initially. I guess what I'm getting at is, what kind of ways do you help people think about an upgrade path? Like, what materials are easier to upgrade later? You know, if you wanted to rip and replace some things, like, you know, maybe your appliances aren't the appliances you're going to live with forever. So you're not, you know, dabbled with regret over that, but you're thinking about it as a path. Or if we're doing like a staged construction, what are some ways that we kind of guide people so that they can think long-term about the design? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, because we have this conversation in different forms with different clients all the time. Trying to think of best way to kind of like encompass all of it. Sometimes we have it where people just want to build an area out. They might not want to finish it. So they have an idea of, you know, I'll finish it in 5 years' time. Now that could be a basement, or that could be, you know, they're doing a renovation and they want to only basically finish the room to a certain extent, like maybe like a garage that they can enclose later or something like that and put some stuff into. Having an idea of just what you want the end goal to be, I think is really appropriate in that sort of regard. Appliances, you will need to replace certain appliances at some point, right? Sometimes people are moving into a house, they want to bring their appliances with them with the idea that they will be upgraded later. Some appliances are easier to upgrade versus others, right? Like if you bring your grill, your hood, your oven, sort of things like that. Is it worth putting like a brand new one in, or just bringing the other ones with you? Sometimes you love a certain oven. For example, ovens can be
and that's like kind of the way. Yeah, but that's exactly the way I want to help people avoid regret. You know, like by telling, like we have a really beautiful stone fireplace, and if we wanted to rip that out and replace it, that would be a very costly thing versus the floors, for example. Like ripping out carpet and putting new floors down is a lot easier than like a fireplace or a back patio, you know. So it's kind of like, how do we help people think about which things are easier?
I guess it would just be site specific, I think. You know, when it comes to flooring, I mean, it would depend. Like, say you were a single story on a concrete basement. It's just like, well, just having exposed concrete for now, that's probably fine for a lot of people, you know. And then you're going to come back and you're going to tile it, or you're going to do, you know, carpet or something, or wood flooring on it later. That's pretty close to a no-brainer. You can figure that out. But making sure that, like, hey, if you're going to put a bathroom or something in there, making sure that we do the drops for the toilet, the shower and stuff like that ahead of time. Those things are important. So having a conversation where we have the end in mind, I think would be important. Like, we have a certain client that looking at, like, hey, we want to have two-phase construction. We want to build, you know, 2,000 square feet, but then we want to do like another master suite later on, say 800 square feet, master suite later on, right, as the family grows. Like, great. All right. So how do we need to approach that side of the house that you're planning on adding that suite onto later? It's better for us to generally design something now, so we have an idea of how big it is, how we will connect into it. And even if that changes, if it is 5 years out, you know, even if it changes in 5 years and we have to come back and redesign that, as long as we have like the idea of how it's going to connect, we can change the rest of it because we haven't built it out yet, right? So again, it'll come back to site-specific, narrative-specific sort of study into it. And they're like, all right, so what are you trying to achieve? What are you bringing? You know, where do you want to stop? But we often try and design it out ahead of time. So like, even if it is 5 years in the future, we're like, let's design it now, knowing that it may change, but at least we have a pretty good idea of where it's going.
So it sounds like, you know, just avoiding a regret means thinking, I mean, just thinking long term, just thinking,
longer.
But also thinking like, what could I live with today in the more near future, and knowing that there's a path.
If it's staged, and being okay with that, because we have plenty of clients who do that sort of thing. If it's a regret around something like, I just don't know what I don't know, then that's why I'm saying go and talk to someone who is specialized in that area, you know, being kitchens or being, you know, finishes or something like that. And having a GC on board quite early is good in that regard as well. You know, so some clients have built houses in the past and others haven't. So often we get regrets from people that have built houses in the past and they haven't seen like a render of it or a 3D of it, or they haven't found the right builder because they've only just chosen one builder from one website at the time and they thought that's how it worked. So the ways that we approach that is, from my perspective, I design everything in 3D so you can see how the layout translates into real life. You can walk through it with me, so it's not just 2D images. And then the other side of that is running a tendering process so that you can have a look at multiple construction firms, because we have lots of good ones, especially in North Georgia, tons of good ones. Some of them have really shitty websites. Others have really good websites. We get that all the time, but they're still really good builders. Some of them are more like your, you know, very small family that just does custom homes and they love doing it, sort of thing, and they don't do anything over like 2,000 square feet or something like that, you know. Whereas others do everything under the sun. They do it really well, but they do spec homes, but they also do custom homes. And certain. The reason I say there's so many different ones is like you might have in your head who you want to work with, and you might be like, I don't want to work with a spec home builder, but that spec home builder is really good because they're able to take the spec home stuff that they do, reduce the cost of a lot of items because whatever they don't use on their custom homes, they put into their spec homes. Therefore, they're ordering a lot more materials, and they actually specialize in custom homes. Spec homes are just an offshoot of that as a leftover part that they're able to do quite well. So you might be like shutting the door on that without knowing that actually that's a really good solution.
Yeah, it's like finding who's the right fit for you.
Exactly. But then we have other clients who are like, no, I want to work with a bigger builder that has like, 40 employees. I don't want to work with this small team of 6 people. It's like, actually, those 6, that's what they do all day long. So, but that's what a tender process does, right? You get to meet with these different people. We do 3 or 4 or something like that. And you can ask them those questions, and you would be surprised the different answers you get back from different.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, all the time. So, I mean, that can even lead into that question about regrets, right? What am I missing? It's like you'll find that every builder has a different opinion of how you should approach something. So, I hope that helped answer the question.
Yeah, no, it did. It's a good dialogue, and good what I should expect to see during this process. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, CC. Actually, I wanted to read one of your other questions that you put in when you registered, because I think it's a good one. It might be a good one to close out on. And if you have if you want to articulate more or add to it, CC, please do. But I liked this. It was, what are the top priorities to consider during the design phase for long-term happiness? And in some ways, we've been talking about that, the whole time. But I kind of like to touch on that, like long-term happiness. What does that look like? And during the design phase, I like that she asked, "What are the top priorities?" Which are different for everybody, but
yeah, that's my answer. Is that it depends on the client. So if you're a family that gathers in the kitchen, as an example, the whole time, and you love to cook, and your kids sit at the kitchen bench while you're cooking and stuff like that, then your happiness is probably going to come around a really nice kitchen and a really nice kitchen island and stuff like that. If you're someone who is retired with your partner and you entertain a lot, the living room or a den or something like that might be really good. Might be where you spend all your time. You might have a partner where you sleep in different beds because someone snores really loudly. So your priorities are on having a master suite that has
a good night's sleep is your priority for happiness.
Yeah, exactly. So, or you might spend all your time outside. So it really will depend on the client. So again, it does come back to narrative on that sort of thing. And it'll become pretty clear to us, like, as we start talking, like, here are the photos. It's like, okay, all of your photos are around this one item. That must be like, is that where it's going to be the priority? But it could be around finishes. It could be around just like, it doesn't have to be high-end finishes. It could just be finishes that are kind of like robust and really like family sort of fun sort of finishes. They don't always have to be expensive finishes, right? So images, the narrative that the client speaks about during the meeting, we'll get a pretty clear picture early on. And then it's just a developing sort of design process, really. So as we go through, we do a concept of it. Sometimes as we do multiple concepts, multiple options to make sure that things are hitting the way that they should. Sometimes, say we have 3 different options. Maybe one of the 3 is really standout, but there's items in the other 2 that you could use in that one. So it's a process, and it's not going to be solved in just one set of drawings. We have to do it again and again. And that's why it's, the design period is longer, I think, than the detailed period, just because it takes longer to make sure we gather all that information and get it into the design.
Yeah, I would add to that, top priorities are different, like you said, for each family. I think part of I don't want to speak for CC, but if I'm understanding kind of the intention of the question, it's like, how do you approach design to make sure that at the end of the process, you really get what you want? You really get those priorities met. and for us, it is a process. It's a process of understanding and listening more than anything, and asking good questions. So the more we understand what our clients value, like you said, whether it's entertaining or cooking or time outdoors or the kids, that's how we define success. So the priorities for us are our priorities would be understanding the client and the story of the home as much as possible. That's why we talk so much about vision statements and vocabulary and writing things out and being very specific about what you're trying to get out of the home, and being very transparent and candid with your architect so they can help you. They actually want to, we don't look at a budget as a constriction so much. We look at a budget as a target for we're tasked with executing on and design. So the better we understand what you're trying to do with that budget, then we can make value-minded suggestions towards that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, did you want to add to
that's
that, Stacey?
exactly what I meant. So
Yeah, okay, good. I
Yeah.
didn't want to speak for you.
when I typed that, I wasn't sure if I articulated it the correct way, but that's exactly what I meant. I mean, because if you spend all of this time and money and effort and other people's time and effort and energy into a project like this, I know for me personally, I would just want to make sure that it is something that I am very happy with in the end. And like you said, happiness, and success just depends on, what I want. And then of course, to me, it's how the builder feels about the end of the project as well, and the design team and everybody. So yeah, definitely what I meant.
Cool.
Yeah. And I
Appreciate
think if you have a lot of passion that goes into it from a client's point of view, you'll find that people, speaking of like the happiness of the construction team and stuff like that, you'll find that people will rally around your project because they can see how much it means to you and stuff like that, right? So someone who comes in and doesn't really mind what's happening, or if it's a developer or someone like that, it's just another job. But if you're very passionate about it and they can see themselves in it as well, I think that you'll find that people will rally around it. There was one other thing I was going to bring up to add to that as well is we started with it at the start of the conversation, was accountability on the client as well. Making sure that you say what you want. This at the end of the day is going to be your home. Right. So we have had clients who get a little bit nervous of being like, actually, I don't like that element or something like that of the design. And I know you work really hard on it, so I don't really want to like say something about it or put it down or something like that. It's like, no, you need to. It's part of your role as the client, right? Like you do have a job in this project, and that is to make sure that you are heard.
Yeah. Well, I always joke and say like we're looking for the 3 A's, which is assertiveness, accountability, and awareness. So if you that, and that's us too. Like we want we need to be assertive, and assertive just means speaking your mind with kindness and respect. In our world, and accountability just means owning your role. So we see our clients as a developer. That's kind of how I think of them in my mind. It's like you're developing a piece of property and you're coming to us with the vision. We're not coming to you with the vision. Like I'm not coming to the client and saying, hey, I want to build this home this way here. We're really coming to the client in response to a development or a project they want to build. So coming into that and having our roles be clearly defined helps us be accountable. And that's kind of the awareness too. It's like, okay, I know where I'm gifted. I know where I'm limited. I know what I bring to this project as the client or as the architect, and understanding that role with integrity is really good. CC or Kaylin, did y'all have any other questions for James before we wrap up?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I know you're still early in the land process, CC, when we spoke not too long ago. So please text me, keep me in the loop. If I haven't given you any good resources, or if you need any good resources for people to help you find property, we have some good partners that we like. And then when you're ready, I'll be glad to come out and do a site visit. And then we'll do a virtual site visit with James where we actually look at the property in more detail and kind of talk about how would the home potentially sit, and how would you orient it in relation to sun path and the property itself. It's kind of fun when we get to that point. So I'm eager for you to get there when the time is right. James,
Thank you,
thanks
me
for
too.
yeah. We'll plan on doing these every month. So we're trying to do, towards the last third week of the month, fourth week of the month, looks like. So in September, we'll get another one on the calendar and we'll come up with a different topic and we'll just talk about custom home design until we don't feel like talking about it anymore. James, thanks for being on today. I appreciate it. Kaylin, thanks for joining us too.
You guys.
Yeah, absolutely.